You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast, and I have with me Jacci Ryan. Jacci is going to share her story with us and where that has taken her and the amazing thing that she's doing. And her story is all about care for your loved ones. Now, we all have had situations where we have had to step up and take care of somebody, many of us for short term. But what happens when you have an invalid, a child, or a parent who absolutely needs care that you physically can't give to them? Who do you turn to? And what can that experience be like? Jacci is going to share her story with us. Welcome, Jacci.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So a few years back, you had two situations. Mom and dad divorced, not living near each other, and the poop hit the fan because guess what? They both needed care.
Yeah.
And you were not even living there.
Well, I purposely moved back from Texas to Northwest Arkansas. I purposely uprooted my life, my career, where I'd been for 20 years in Texas doing commercial real estate, to return home after 9/11 because I realized my parents were getting older. Of course, they were not going to move to Texas. And so I decided to return to Northwest Arkansas. And yeah, it was still quite a culture shock from Texas back to Arkansas.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Boy, but
we can talk about that in a whole other conversation.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you come from good stock. Okay.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. Oh, good parentage. Okay, I guess, whatever. But yeah, so I purposely uprooted myself to come back home because I was concerned about my parents' well-being in their later years. Yes, I have an older brother and stepbrother here. And but anyway, I was, of course, as most women are, the ones in charge of the caregiving when it need be. And I ended up building my home within eye-shot distance of my father's home on the same property. And I could be at his house in 3 minutes. So I was just that close to being near him and to help him around the farm and ranch and everything here. And I was always just a phone call away. But what happened is what would happen with anybody in any situation. I had my life, my career going here in Northwest Arkansas, doing real estate and everything. And I got a call one morning before I was going out, and my dad had fallen and broken his hip, which happens a lot. And so I rushed down there and I called 911. And after being put on hold momentarily with 911, 911, really, and giving the address 3 times, they summoned an ambulance. So point one there is, if you're over 70 years old or so, it would be very wise to have a life alert, which we got that later. So if you unexpectedly have a stroke or you fall or something, your phone is on the counter. It's good to have whether it's an Apple Watch or a life alert to hit, so it'll be with you while your phone's on the counter and you're down on the ground. So that's a life lesson number 1. And so he fell and broke his hip, got him from the hospital, rehab, back home. And I did what I would think anybody would do, is call a home care agency. That's their profession. And for them to have somebody to come out and take care of my dad part-time. And I just called one agency. I was referred to them. Okay, we'll do that. And we had a wonderful woman for about 3 months or so until my dad fell and broke his other hip. So then he needed 24/7 care. And we used the same agency and had to find a different person. So ideally, usually it's good to have about 3 people on staff, day, evening, 8-hour times, things like this and everything. But hiring an agency doesn't mean you're going to point to hiring an agency doesn't mean you're going to have the best qualified care. Why is that? Okay, well, let's talk about employment. Let's talk about the money. So the money, agencies can make anywhere from $20 to $30, $40 an hour. They're hiring these people, these caregivers, and they maybe have gone to class to become a caregiver. They may not necessarily be a CNA. They may not be a nurse's aide. They may not have had specialized nurse training, none whatsoever, medical training. They have perhaps taken a caregiving class. And so they become a caregiver, taking their 40 hours, and they go to work for $10 to $12 an hour. Okay, so then who wants to work for that little pay? Maybe they feel entitled, or they're busy on their phone and texting, and they're not paying attention to your loved one. Or so my profession being in real estate, and what's happened in the modern world of technology nowadays, just like travel agencies, real estate agencies, I'm saying to perhaps bypass the agency and go direct. There's resources online that you can hire somebody direct. You can qualify if they're a CNA or an RN. You can pay them direct, maybe $18, $20 an hour. You hire them, you interview them, you do a background check on them, and bypass the agency. Yes, you have to give them a 1099 at the end of the year. And yes, you hired them, you can fire them. The thing about caregiving is not just to hire an agency and expect your loved one to be taken care of. My mission is to get laws passed, and it's a state by state, but I'm working in the state of Arkansas of getting FBI Rat Back implemented. And it's not going to happen overnight. I've worked 3 years on it. We've got a change of legislators now, and a change of governors here, and a change of the state police. So what FBI Rat Back does, say if Missy went to Vegas for a junket and got picked up for DUI or meth, and she gets bailed out, she goes back to work on Tuesday, the employer wouldn't know. She gets bailed out. She takes care of her legal problems by taking sick leave or vacation pay or whatever, vacation leave, and takes care of her legal problems. And the employer doesn't know. The employer, who may be assisted living, home care agency, daycares, these. So nobody, as well as schools. We can go even to schools. Schools are looking to do FBI Rat Back, I believe, in Virginia right now. So what FBI Rat Back is ongoing real-time background check. So what would happen if Missy got picked up in Vegas? It blips. It would notify the Arkansas State Police. The Arkansas State Police would then notify the current employer on record, and the employer would know that Missy had been picked up for meth, drugs, jail, whatever. It's up to that employer then to do if they want to fire that person or not. It doesn't matter whether they're convicted. It's just that the employer knows that there's been some trouble with their employee. Right. Yeah. Unlike being maybe background checked upon hiring, and then you're at a facility, assisted living facility, a daycare, school employment for 5, 10, 15 years. Who knows what's going on over here, because they're not being background checked even on an annual basis. Right. So I was so pleased. Last week, I was at the Capitol and met different legislators and the Alzheimer's Association president, and we're working to get FBI Rat Back implemented in the state of Arkansas. FBI Rat Back is in about 7 states right now. It's in the state of Texas. Oklahoma is getting it. It's in Missouri, I believe Utah, maybe Nevada, Hawaii, and Florida. So it's not anything new. but it is a necessity. The home care business is one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States. Why? Because you don't want to send your loved one to a nursing home. You
And the
want your
baby
loved,
boomers are getting older.
and we're getting older. And who's going to, and call me selfish, who's going to take care of me 20 years from now, 15 years from now? Who's going to take care of me? Not somebody getting paid $10 or $15 an hour. I promise you that. Somebody who's going to take care of me is going to be background checked and fingerprinted. And my profession of being in real estate, I was fingerprinted, background checked in the state of Texas. And this is when I learned about the FBI rat bag, because when I was doing a continuing education, it's like, what is all this extra documentation? It was FBI rat bag in the state of Texas. Why? Why is that? There were felons doing real estate transactions in the state of Texas, just like could be happening right here in the state of Arkansas and different states, because yes, I was background checked and fingerprinted to sell real estate in Arkansas, but it's not required to be fingerprinted to take care of vulnerable loved ones out here. But I've not been background checked or fingerprinted since I got my real estate license in Arkansas 20 years ago. So when in Arkansas, we get a continuing education and we get through and so, have you ever been convicted of any felonies or crimes? We check the box. No. And that's the way it is in many states, whether it's real estate or any kind of profession for continuing education. Have you been convicted of any crimes or felonies? You check the box. No.
So what were some of the things that happened with your father and consecutively with your mother that actually put you on this journey?
So my father, when Claire finally showed up through this agency, 1, she showed up. 2, she showed up on time. 3, she had a great smile and engaging with my dad and me, very communicative, got along with my dad and family, and we liked her. She liked us. Fantastic. And we're good. We're fine. I mean, I felt like I met a new best friend because she's taking care of my dad. My dad's happy. I'm happy. Everything's going great. Until it was a red flag and we didn't do anything about it. Because why? The red flag was I found a receipt for $900 for new tires. And it was on her car, not my dad's, but her car. And so I contacted my brothers. We had a family sit down and, oh, it's just a loan. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. And all this. And she was in tears and dad apologized. And we said, if you need some help, let us know. Just talk to us and we'll see what we can do to help you out or whatever, because we liked her. But what happened was her and my dad, we call it, went further underground. And eventually where dad was paying for her grandkids' summer camp, dad was paying for her, of course, cigarettes, her groceries, all of this, everything. But I didn't know that because that was their expenses. And hey, it's his money. He can do with what he wants, right? Yes. Well, another aspect is that I believe my dad had dementia. He developed dementia. His mother had dementia. His sister had dementia. My dad had dementia, but he was never tested. And yes, I spoke with his doctor about his competency briefly, a little bit, because if Claire would have ever grabbed onto that, then she would have thrown me under the bus a lot sooner than later, which she did later. So dad was never tested a competency. So it was so to say that he was always competent to do with what his money. Paid off her mortgage, paid off her $20,000 mortgage. She was hired by a private home care agency where my dad paid over $200,000 a year for this service. And as somebody said, there was no regulatory oversight on these agencies. There's not. So my dad's story is about for 5 years. And it was only until about 2.5 years of her employment that she gladly told me in front of a neighbor that, oh, she's been in jail before. She was in jail for meth. I'm like, what? So I went to the agency and I said, did you know that Claire has been in jail? And he turned a screen around and showed me the background check. And he says, well, we kind of inherited her, meaning we had moved her from one agency to another, to this agency, but we never knew that she had been in jail before. And so how comfortable did she feel telling me this, knowing that she wouldn't be fired? So all hands off. I mean, I thought the agency, I would go talk to the agency about different things going on. I just thought that the agency didn't know. The agency, a husband, wife, owner, I just thought they didn't know. They knew the whole time. They knew. They just didn't want to give up that account. They didn't want to fire her. And in fact, in 2017, her service only ended when my dad died in 2021. So, I mean, this is like a 5+ year story. But when in 2017, me and my brothers went and discussed Claire with the agency, and the agency did a violation write-up, had her sign it. You can't go see Claire. Claire cannot have him at her house during her off time hours. She needs to pay for her own groceries, blah, 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 blah. All this was signed, and none of it was ever enforced. But I tell you, when we get our age and after all this has happened, it's like, what do you got to lose? So at my dad's visitation, and I was nearing the end of writing my book, and I couldn't finish my book until my dad had passed. But I had printed out the violations that were said like 3 years earlier. And so when the owners came through visitation to give me a big hug and, oh, I'm so sorry and all this, I gave him this envelope. He says, oh, what's this? I said, what's for you? Oh, for me? I said, yeah. So I put in there, I said, all this was a bunch of BS. You guys never cared for my dad, cared more about the money than you did for my father. So when the burial was the next day, they stayed on that side and I stayed on the other side. Yeah. So yes, I mentioned, yes, I have a brother, stepbrother, but it's easier to not do anything than to do something. And if it's my dad was happy, then who knows, who cares? Dad's happy. It didn't matter how many thousands of dollars was going out the door. It didn't matter that I was removed as his health POA when I was 3 minutes from him because Claire convinced my dad that I was going to put him in a nursing home, which never crossed my lips. And I say this because another caregiver told me this later. And the other two caregivers that were hired, how does a low-life person build themselves up? By putting other people down.
Right.
And so they fired one good caregiver that truly loved my dad, took care of him nicely, but she would not accept money from my dad. So therefore she did not stroke my dad's ego.
Right.
And then another lady eventually was fired. Also, she just knew too much and they fired her. She had a nervous breakdown, moved out of state. The first one they fired because she had hurt her back and she couldn't show up. And then Clara convinced my dad that she was an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. And this woman was only 51 years old and she died 6 months later, probably from depression and maybe pain pills.
Mm-hmm.
She died 6 months later and she loved my dad. And I told the agency later, and I said, you've got the blood of this woman on your hands. So, I could go on and on. My mother ended up being in hospice care at home for 6 months because she had cancer. I didn't hire that agency. I hired a different agency. Oh, the first week with this agency, this woman stole my mom's OxyContin and hydrocodone. And I didn't know that till after I fired her, but I fired her because she'd show up late, she'd leave early. My mom was bedfast, and there was gastric explosions in the toilet that I never had to clean before in my life, such nastiness. But the second time, 2 evenings in a row, I had to call a plumber the second time. And it's probably because this person was taking these drugs. And so I fired her, called the agency, to have her fired, never to return. And, you know, it was about 2 months. I had to go file a police report. The lady did come back. The person, she was not a lady. The person came back and did a written confession that she stole my mom's narcotics for her mother-in-law. No, she went to go sell them.
Right.
So what this agency did, they just moved this person onto a new client victim until the police report was filed. And it's like, oh, Jackie, why has this happened to you? I don't know. Maybe it's because this needs to happen. There needs to be more awareness. I mean, it's a crisis situation in a humanity environment. And it's like, what am I going to do? Call 10 agencies to find the best one? Are you kidding me? I mean, you just call one, you expect they're all going to be about the same and do a good job, and they don't. So what I've learned is to really kind of bypass the agency and go direct. Find there's resources online. There's resources listed in my book and online to hire somebody direct, and you pay them and you fire them if there's something awry. And you've got to be hands-on. Okay, if you live out of state, how are you going to be hands-on? It's called communication. And, you know, develop a sense. I've got to think, be aware and be prepared. So you say, well, Jackie, this isn't really important right now. My mom and dad are fine. Okay. Well, your dad's 70 to 75 years old. Have you guys discussed what happens that if you fall and break your hip? Have you had that discussion? Or do you want to go visit some assisted living places in case something happens? Do you want to go to assisted living? Okay, you want to stay at home. Maybe we need to go visit some of these home care agencies to see how you like one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got to do a process. But when a crisis happens, like fall and break your hip, you know, or hospice, you got cancer, just go home. And you can't just call one agency. You've got to interview many, whether it's agencies or individuals. And something in my book, I've got like a 2-page questionnaire of questions to ask, how to best qualify an agency and how to best qualify a caregiver.
Right.
You know, the name of my book is Caregiver ScareTakers because it's intertwined. People can say caregiver or caretaker. I call it caregiver or ScareTaker.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is just so very important. I do have a funny story about the life alert. You did mention that. And I absolutely agree. I had a friend whose aunt was passing. She had cancer. And it was her third bout with cancer. And she's like, yeah, it's time. So she had a life alert. Well, she woke up in the middle of the night and had to go to the bathroom. Well, she had hit her life alert. And so they come on, and let's say her name is Nancy, which it's not, but Nancy, are you all right? Now she just woke up and she's looking around. She goes, Mom, is that you? Thinking that she had died and that was her mother calling her. Right. And they're like, no, this is the life alert. And she was, oh, no, I'm fine. That was a mistake. But the funniest is, you know, if you knew this woman, you could just see how she so innocently go, Mom, is that you?
Take me home.
Right? Is it that simple? Right? Here I am sitting on the throne and I think I'm in heaven, right? Oh my goodness. But definitely, you know, I like the fact that you say have a plan before you need. Be proactive, right? Understand what your needs are, understand what your desires are, you know. And honestly, I have to get this done. I have decided who is going to be my medical proxy, and it's not the daughter I'm living with.
Right.
I have to have that certified.
Yes.
Because it's not her. Right. And so I need to go and have that taken care of, legally taken care of, not just write the form out. Right. So it's just those types of things you need to check into to be sure that when you are not capable, that your wishes are truly carried out.
Yes.
Right.
What happened? I was removed as my dad's health POA. I think I mentioned when I was just right here. And what caused that, I believe, I was not ever specifically told. We were not talking much because I was the one, I guess, doing the confrontation because things were not right.
Right.
And at one time I saw about 3 or 4 receipts totaling about $350 in about a 2-week period of groceries for this little skinny ass man who's 86 years old. Really? So I took pictures of the receipts and I sent them to Claire and I said, do you all have enough groceries to last the rest of the month now? And that's where silence is, something's going on. And it wasn't within about 3 weeks after that I got a call. No, my husband got a call from my stepbrother saying that I'd been removed as my dad's health POA. Not that my dad would tell me, not that anybody would have a discussion, but I don't know what happened between you and your dad, but that's what he's wanting. And what happened, I tell you what happened, is that Claire had convinced my dad I was going to send him to a nursing home. And so she picked up the phone and dialed the phone number to his attorney, and dad made the statement, and
it's done.
It was done like that.
Yep.
No discussion.
Yep. It's done. And this is just an example of the type of stuff that absolutely goes on. Absolutely goes on
every day.
Yeah. And every state, right?
Every state.
Right. And so even if your loved one is in a nursing home. So I have a quick little story and then we'll wrap this up. I have a dear friend whose mom, ended up in a nursing home. Long story of how that happened. And she was there Monday through Thursday, and her other siblings took care of the weekends. So on her way home from work, she would go there, and she every time would have to fight for, you need to change my mother's sheets, you need to clean my mother up, you need to feed my mother, you need to, and she was a little mousy thing. But when it came to her mother in that nursing home, she was up their butt. And she was like, I don't want that nurse dealing with her anymore. I want her off the case.
Yeah.
You have to be engaged. It's not hands off.
Absolutely. And it was just, it disintegrated to where I would go down and see my dad once a week, bring him the newspaper, and he wouldn't tell me, talk to me. When I was removed as his health care POA, 30 days later, he fell. He called me. Of course, he had somebody there. It wasn't the ScareTaker, Claire, but it was somebody else. He says, well, I got hurt. I said, okay. And I was down there. But I couldn't do anything because I was no longer his healthcare POA. So I sat there and waited over an hour for my brother to show up, who lived 30 minutes away. We waited over 2 hours for Nurse Nikki to appear from the home care agency. And I said, Dad, I would have had you at the doctor's office ER 30 minutes ago, like at 7:30 in the morning. I said, why did you remove me as your POA? He says, you wanted my money. And I said, I don't need your money. He said, I know that. You don't want to argue.
I know. With Alzheimer's, no.
And that was the last time, Gail, he ever called me, because I bet he was so chastised for calling his daughter that lived right here. He never, ever called me after that. He would not ever talk to me about anything because he was so chastised by her to keep his mouth shut. And, she got thousands of dollars. Yeah. I mean, I know where she lives now. She's got a nicer home now. Her son's got 10 acres of land that my dad ended up, I know this from the other caregiver, of giving them $10,000 or $15,000. Hey, it's his money. I guess he can do whatever he wants. So,
right.
My book was, I made it black because it is a dark subject. It's not a happy book, but it's a helpful book. It's a very helpful book. What I learned, it wasn't just my story or stories. I'm in real estate by profession, but I was dealing and talking with other people who have the same experiences of caregivers nationwide. There's
Right.
about 17 chapters in here, whether it's Florida, Texas, Arkansas, California. And so, of course, the hand is the caregiver, ScareTaker's hand manipulating the
Right.
loved one who is isolated. They isolate the loved one from the family and their friends. Their friends too. I mean, you might have one or two friends, and that they'll just isolate them, and then the money goes out the window.
Right. Right. And that's very narcissistic behavior. Right.
Oh,
Very,
absolutely.
yep.
My
Very,
dad was a
very
narcissist and she was a narcissist, and it takes
interesting.
one narcissist to know another narcissist.
Absolutely.
Right on, right on.
And so, other than your book, which I'm assuming is available on Amazon,
Available on Amazon. It
Yeah.
made number 4 on elder care abuse when it debuted.
nice.
And it's got the questionnaire in the back, how to best qualify a caregiver and or an agency. It just, my saying is, raise the bar on caregivers will raise the bar on the quality of care.
Right. Exactly. But you still have to oversee it. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that, Jackie?
My website, caretakers.com, or info@caretakers.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And if this interested you, or if you have a question, do leave a comment for us. And if you know someone who maybe could use this information, share this episode out to them. And always, always like us and subscribe so you know about more wonderful episodes. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.